Hello, first round fantasy fans, and welcome to the First Round Fantasy Football Podcast, your home for second round advice. I think I jinxed us over the last two episodes because it is a super, super hot day here in Northern California, and it's only going to get hotter, and I mean that literally, but it's also figuratively because it's getting hot on today's show. I'm joined as always by Jacob Hartley, Joseph Morsaz, and Damon Ricks. How are we doing today, boys?
Pretty good, man.
Noise that we just heard.
I don't know what the hell that was.
That was my Snapchat. My bad, guys.
It's a crazy day for fantasy football.
Three of us are ready for this podcast.
For those of you who play in like keeper and dynasty leagues, it's hot for trades right now. We had some crazy trades going on.
Super hot.
We don't want to bother you with that, but I mean, let's just say the GM won out on quite a few trades today.
And lost out.
Most lost out.
Hey, I felt bad for Joe.
Lost out.
Hey, Joe, I felt bad for Gabe. That's why I made my trade, you know?
I think I made like 5 good trades in 2 days.
It's certainly trade happy season as we near draft time for many, many leagues out there. We have a lot of drafts happening this weekend, guys. We have 2 this weekend, and then 1 next weekend, and then I think the big one in September. You're not in one of them. The drop.
Okay. It's down to an 8-man now.
Yeah.
That, dude.
8-man, we're going to be all stacked.
Don't say that out loud.
It doesn't matter. We're looking forward to it, guys. I'm happy that you guys are here. I'm so excited that you guys can join us who are listening out there. Let's get into today's news. Starting off with breaking, I guess you could say, because this is fresh within the last 2 hours. George Kittle signs a new deal. Wah, wah, wah. The 49ers are giving tight end George Kittle an $18 million signing bonus, a large sum, especially in a pandemic COVID-19 season. Let's see here. Guys, what do we think? This makes George Kittle the highest paid tight end per season. He's currently making $15 million per season.
And of all time, I believe.
Of course.
Hunter Henry ranks second, $10 million. Austin Hooper, 10.5. Travis Kelce, 9.3. And Rob Gronkowski, 9. And Kyle Rudolph, 9.
Kelce just signed his new deal, so they're not far off.
Yeah, that was the other bit of breaking news. What do you guys make of it?
Good players get money.
Paid, yep. I love it.
Hey, I read an article that said you cannot judge George Kittle's contract compared to other tight ends. You have to judge it towards other receivers. And in that case, he would be, I think, the 7th highest paid pass catcher. And I think he deserves that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even think to look at it that way.
The tight end position has changed. Like, for those type of guys, they're receiver. Like, Kelsey's in the same category. They're receivers now.
I think this is interesting to bring up really quick before we move on. There was somebody in a group chat of ours just a couple of days ago who was talking about how they wanted to get rid of the tight end position. And I just think that's absurd. Like, if you pay up for people like Kittle and Kelce in like the 2nd and 3rd rounds, like you are getting a premium player at that position, and it just changes the draft strategy and your gameplay for like the entire season outlook when you draft players like that early. So people who are able to do that and still find success, man, props to you because you got a great, solid tight end position who can easily fit in RB territory and wide receiver territory as far as fantasy value. It's crazy.
The problem is with that, you can't start. There's not a tight end. There's not other like a wide receiver, right? You can start them in the flex and the wide receiver spot. When you take away the tight end position, you can only start them in a flex. So they become another receiver that you can't start in the receiver spot. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. But still, nonetheless, it's happy. It's good to see people getting paid. As always, we have 2 new people sporting the merch this week. Jacob, Damon.
Yes.
I don't usually find you guys attractive, but today you're good looking. Goodness gracious. Not only that, guys, we are now literally everywhere. So I said it last week and I'll say it today. If you don't like looking at our faces, guess what? You don't have to watch us on YouTube anymore, although we really appreciate it if you do, because we are everywhere else. Spotify, iHeartRadio, and a slew of other platforms. So feel free to search us out there, First Round Fantasy. It's as easy as that. Let's jump right into it, guys. We are doing the AFC North today, and we're going to start out at the top of the AFC North. That is the Baltimore Ravens, 14-2 last year. And they got ousted early in the playoffs by the Tennessee Titans. But fantasy-wise, oh my goodness. I mean, you had the number 1 overall QB in fantasy last year, Lamar Jackson, current ADP, going with the last pick in the 3rd round. Now, I wanted to do a little bit of research just to see, because Jacob and I have talked about in the past that it's not often that you see a player at their position finish number 1 overall back-to-back years. So I wanted to look maybe just within the last 10 years and find a player, if any, who had done it. And there was one player, and that was Aaron Rodgers, and he did it in the 2010 and 2011 season. He finished as the overall QB1 in fantasy. After that, he was pretty steady in the top 4 or top 5 within that range throughout his career. I know last year he wasn't really there, but Jackson is younger. He is a far better talent at his age. I mean, is he another player that we can see possibly repeat at that QB1 finish?
I don't think so, because he ran for 1,200 yards last year, and I think teams will scheme for that and kind of lower those numbers, which would allow Mahomes to leapfrog him.
Mm-hmm. I always think about him in like a Madden game, and you would always have that QB spy player that you would just control because you knew that somebody who had like Michael Vick was going to run all the time. So you just wanted to have that guy. But I don't know if you can do that in the NFL. It's just not a video game. And this guy's putting up video game numbers. Joe, do you think he can replicate what he did last year and finish as the overall QB1?
He could be overall QB1, but I don't think at the level that he was last year. I think these guys he's going to be hungry, right? He wants to win the Super Bowl. He feels like he got robbed. But I think for overall team success, they need to get better in the air. And Marquise Brown's going to have a bigger year this year. And I think DeMont's right. He's not going to see as much rushing yards. I would still take him QB1, but I could see the argument for Mahomes and probably just Mahomes and him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like your point there. And it's fair to say that, if he doesn't put up the rushing numbers that he did last year, does he improve through the air and supplement that with his new air yards? Like, I don't know. Jacob, what do you think?
Yeah, it's tough because I think the rushing is the thing that puts him over the edge over even a Mahomes. And I didn't even realize he rushed for 1,200 yards. That's insane.
Those are RB1 numbers.
That's crazy. That makes me think like he should definitely be going in the 2nd round on it, like just in regular redraft leagues, because he's getting that rushing production. But I don't know. I still think he does finish as number 1, but I think he's going to be less of himself last year. And because the thing is, he's not as good of a passer as he is a runner. So I think it's going to like kind of even itself out a little bit, but I still think he'll be number 1.
That is fair to say. Now, let me ask you guys this, and I want all of your opinions. You look at these top-tier quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, the 2 that come to mind right off the bat. These are guys that are going in the 2nd, early 3rd round. We just talked about people that are really spectacular draft-wise when they pick up those tight ends and their teams still look fantastic at the end of drafts. Would you consider drafting someone like Lamar Jackson's or Patrick Mahomes? Because there are so many people out there that just would rather wait and pick up their quarterbacks late. I know that I'm personally one of them, so I'll never touch a guy like Lamar Jackson or Pat Mahomes at their price. So I guess I'll speak up first. But would you guys ever consider it?
No, I never reach. I'd rather just wait.
Yeah, I just feel like quarterback is that one position in fantasy football where just because there's the number 1 overall QB going like 2.10 doesn't mean that my guy that I pick up in the 12th round can also have the same number of QB1 weeks as him or something like that. Like, there's just so much depth at the QB position. Jacob, anything?
I always wait. Sometimes I wish I didn't, because I see Mahomes and Jackson winning weeks, and I'm like, okay, Jackson went off for 45, my QB went off for 25, and I lost by 10. So when I look at those type of things, it's like, damn, he can win me weeks, but I can never justify taking like Lamar Jackson over a top 10 wide receiver or a top 10 running back. It's so hard for me. So regular standard league, I wait on quarterback.
Yeah. What about you, Joe?
I think it depends on the kind of league you're in, guys. Because we're in a couple different leagues where if it's 6 points per touchdown, then I'll take Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes in the second or probably the third round. If I can get him early third, I'm doing it.
Like if you have the number one pick and you get like the last two picks in the set, like this last of the second round and the first and the third.
Yeah, I could see it. If I could get two good running backs and then come back around and grab Patrick Mahomes in the early third round in a 6-point touchdown league, I don't mind that. But I'm definitely not doing it in a 4-point touchdown.
Oh, yeah,
league,
no way.
where the difference between Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott just isn't big enough.
And you don't want to end up like me deciding between like Phillip Rivers and a bad matchup.
Winston was the number 2 quarterback last year, bro. But I hear you.
Yeah, but he had those up and down games though, to where like you constantly flip flop between them.
50 or 15. That was Jameis Winston last year.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it is safe to say that we all predict that, you know, if anyone can do it, it is Lamar Jackson. So let's go ahead and look at the running back now. Mark Ingram, current ADP, 4th pick of the 5th round. He finishes the RB11 last year. Not a bad year, especially with those 15 TDs. So he was good across the board. However, run-heavy Ravens go out and draft J.K. Dobbins. And his current ADP is currently in the 8th round, 3rd pick. So looking at this new scenario, I mean, for me personally, I look at this as a complete investment into the future. Mark Ingram has 1 year left on his contract. I think they will keep him as their workhorse running back. I'm not entirely sure, but that's just what my gut says. Are you guys scared by J.K. Dobbins taking some carries away from Mark Ingram this year?
Not in a redraft league. I think you still stick with Ingram. That team wants to win it. It's like you said. I agree with everything you just said right there. He's got 1 year left on his contract. They need to put some money other places, and they're investing into the future with Dobbins. Let him groom behind Ingram, and he'll probably see 75, 100, maybe 125 carries. But Ingram, that's a run-heavy team, and Ingram is still going to get his.
Yeah,
I like that Dobbins.
Go ahead.
What's
up? I said I like Dobbins in a dynasty league though, because like you said, Ingram's last year, and then also Gus Edwards is gone next year, so it would just be J.K. Dobbins and Justice Hill if they don't bring either two of those guys back.
Yeah,
that is a true statement. I mean, I think he's a safe pick, but then I started looking at other running backs that are currently going around him. So we're gonna play gut call, and this is just your gut opinion, just straight up. I'm gonna give you 1 or 2 options. Well, I'm going to give you 2 options, and I just want your gut opinion. Unfortunately, only 2 of you can play because I only came up with 2 other running backs. So, Jacob, you're up first. Gut opinion, Devin Singletary or Mark Ingram? That is not a gut decision, Jacob.
That's
Devin Singletary.
Yeah.
And let's go with Damon. Sorry, Joe, but you'll get the next one.
Okay.
Damon, Mark Ingram or David Montgomery?
David Montgomery.
Perfect.
Hey, I can still play. I'll take Ingram over both of those guys.
Well, look, here's the thing for me, and look, when we're talking redraft because when we evaluate a player, we're talking redraft.
No dynasty.
So Mark Ingram it's not that he's more talented than Dobbins right now. It's that Mark Ingram is there. He's a leader. He's a part of their culture. He's been motivating Lamar Jackson. He hypes up Lamar Jackson so much and is like kind of the personality of the team. So Mark Ingram is their guy. Like in the locker room, he's the one talking a lot. So that's why he's gonna be the lead running back all year, unless he gets injured or something.
Yeah. I'd take him over Singletary or Montgomery for a redraft.
I just like Singletary a lot, and I would take him Ingram over Montgomery though.
Perfect. I mean, like I said, all of those guys are going essentially like 2 or 3 picks after one another or before. So they're in that same realm of tiered running backs. Personally, I'd probably take Mark Ingram as well, just given that he's on the best overall team, even though the Buffalo Bills look to push for their division, the Chicago Bears, I don't know. But David Montgomery certainly carries a workhorse load, 250 carries over that last year. So, I mean, it's tough for me there, but I would take the sure thing in Mark Ingram. He's on the better team. Let's go ahead and look at Mark Andrews. He's right on the cusp of those. Do I take a tight end this early? He's going in the 5th round, 4th pick. 10 TDs last year. He was arguably Lamar Jackson's, I want to say number 1 target. But it's just, I don't know. Hayden Hurst is gone. So whatever targets he had last year are out the door. It seems like this is Mark Andrews' year to probably put up better numbers. Joe, do you have anything to say about that?
I like him. I had him in a couple of leagues last year, and I think he only got better. I'm not sure I'm grabbing him up in the 5th round if I miss out on those top tight ends, but I think, if Kittle and Kelsey are going in the 2nd or 3rd, Andrews in the 5th is pretty good value. He didn't finish that far off of either of those guys last year.
That is so true. And that's another one of those positions where it's like, outside of the top 3, there's such a drop-off. So to see that Mark Andrews can go 2 rounds later and have the same potential as those 2 guys, he's worth a look for sure. Jacob, anything?
So for me, I like Mark Andrews a lot. If I'm going into the year with him as my tight end, I feel good. But again, 5th round, I still want to grab a running back or wide receiver, or maybe even my quarterback, depending on where it's at. But if I don't get Kelsey or Kittle, I'm waiting to get somebody else like a Gesicki or a Ingram or something like that. So I'm not necessarily drafting Andrews in the 5th round.
Yeah, QB and tight end are just those positions where you're like, Damon?
I think there's going to be a huge regression. Touchdown. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I hear your hot take, baby. Let's hear
it. The way you did that, it seemed like I cut off. I think there's gonna be a huge regression. Touchdowns is not something that you can hope for or wish for, and 10 is a lot for a tight end, not named Gronkowski. He led the team in yards, and I think he's gonna take a backseat to Brown. Just look at the last game, the playoff game. All year it was Andrews, but then in that playoff game, Marquise Brown got 11 targets and 126 yards. So I think that going forward, Jackson's going to try and get his young receiver more involved. And then Mark Andrews is going to be, running short routes and blocking.
I like what you have to say, Damon. However, that is coming from the guy who is high, and we'll talk about this next player because you just mentioned him, Marquise Brown. Damon's made a couple of trades for him recently, so obviously he feels pretty high on him. Last year, as a rookie, he had some spurts where he showed that he could be an explosive, big game wide receiver. However, he did finish as the wide receiver 45 last year. He's currently going in the 7th round. I do think that's a good value, but I guess with him, and before we get into this any deeper, it's fair to say that as of right now, until Lamar Jackson proves he can support other wide receivers, I'm not touching Willie Snead. I'm not touching Boyle, and I don't even know who those other guys are.
So they drafted a rookie. Is he on here? Is it? I think it's. Which one is it? Is it Prosh or no? Let me see here. Balt Ravens rookie. You guys can go ahead and keep talking. I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to touch any of those guys, but this does bring. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, this brings me to keep trade cut because I do think that, in my personal opinion, there are better wide receivers around him. Now, I'm not going to say that these are wide receivers that are going in the general vicinity, but they're in the range. Okay, so we're gonna play keep trade keep, trade, cut. All of you guys are welcome to play. Jacob, I'll start with you. Keep, trade, cut. Marquise Brown, AJ Green, and Devontae Parker.
Devontae Parker?
Okay. So I'm
It's
keeping
Jacob's turn.
Devontae Parker. I'm trading Marquise Brown, and I'm cutting AJ Green.
That's a good way to look at it. Joe, go ahead.
Same thing. Devontae Parker's going in the 7th round?
He is
I'm
currently going in the
shocked.
7th round.
Bro, it's because people are still seeing him as he was before. Like, I think some people are just like, oh, that was a fluke. He's not going to do that again. I disagree, but
I traded him today
Didn't
for.
you say that, Jay?
No,
You're like,
he's not
he
only
out his
going in
fifth
the
year?
7th round. He's going basically the 8th round.
That is insane that anybody would consider Marquise Brown over Devontae Parker.
Parker had one good year.
I get that, man, but he is a talented football player, and as is Marquise Brown. But I just like Miami to be a team that's going to be behind and throwing a lot more than the Ravens, who are going to get ahead and run the ball like they did
Joe's a
last year.
Dolphins fan now, guys. Come on, we got to accept it.
Oh, yeah.
Joe, believe it or not,
Dang, Joe.
Devontae Parker is going in the 8th round, actually. Pretty much the first pick in the 8th round. And Marquise Brown is going early in the 7th round. So there's
Honestly,
I love
Parker
to hear
should be
that.
going in the 4th round. And I just realized we have to change our colors because our colors are like Dolphins colors.
Very
we're
true.
rebranding live on the pod.
We'll go black, gold, silver, and
I'll hit
black.
you up with the last one because you did just trade for Marquise Brown. So keep, trade, cut. Marquise Brown, AJ Green, Devontae Parker. Damon.
Did you ask me?
Yes.
Oh, I would keep Brown, trade Parker because I feel like you get the most value for him because of that season last year. I don't think he's gonna be able to replicate that. And then I cut Green.
Oh, man. Guys, this is perfect. You know why? Because I love when we have great segues. Because for my keep, trade, cut, I am going to keep AJ Green. I'm going to trade Devontae Parker, and I'm going to cut Marquise Brown. And with that being said, let's talk about our Cincinnati Bengals. We went from literally worst to first. Bengals last year, 2-14. Yikes. Let's talk about the guy who is coming back off of a horrible year, a year in which he didn't even play. That's AJ Green, who I just said I would keep. He's currently going right around the same place as Devontae Parker. And I get it, guys. I might be someone who lives in the past. I understand that. I mean, I drafted McCoy for like 5 straight years, and only 2 of those was even good. So it happens that way for me sometimes. But when you look at this guy and 6 seasons, over 1,000 yards, 3 seasons with 10-plus TDs, although he did not play in 2019, I mean, that's unfortunate. He only played in 9 games in 2018, but guess what? He was still good. He almost had 1,000 yards in those 9 games, and 6 TDs to add with that. I mean, for a wide receiver that is 31, you have a rookie QB in Joe Burrow, who's going to come and look for that veteran leadership. AJ Green came out in an interview on ESPN and said, I feel healthy. I plan on playing for 4 more years. Now, me personally, I don't know if all 4 of those years are going to be with Cincinnati, but any NFL player can be confident and talk a big game. But literally, AJ Green has shown that when he is healthy, he is unstoppable. I think he has a little bit more in the tank, and that's not just off a word hype from him himself, but I mean, goodness gracious, I love him at a 8th round value. What about you guys?
Yeah,
It's a matter of
mind. Like I like having AJ Green as like my 3rd wide receiver because I just don't know what to expect from him. But look, here's the thing: we've seen him be a wide receiver 1, top 6 guy, top 7 guy. He could do that again this year. He really could. So, look, Joe and I talk about ceilings a lot for players. For me, AJ Green's ceiling is top 10. It is. But his floor is very low, too, for me. So it's a risky pick. So I'm not feeling confident if, like, I don't know, if he's my 2nd best wide receiver. But I do like him as a bargain draft pick.
I like what you say there because – go ahead, Damon.
So with a guy like Green, though, he had a huge rapport with Dalton, who looked for him in situations, and I just don't think with Burrow he doesn't have that yet. So I think his ceiling is more top 20 than top 10 personally, just because of the quarterback.
Yeah, and with that being said, I mean, top 20 is still a good value then in the 7th round. Those are usually the receivers you find right around there. And Jacob, to answer to go off of what you said earlier, I mean, he is a huge risk. I mean, if he was going 2 rounds later, oh man, that's when you start hitting home runs and trying to look for those steals in the draft. But at the 7th round, that might not be the value we need just yet to like say, oh my gosh, I'm excited for this. But he's still so luscious looking right there. And Damon said, yeah, he's got a good rapport with Andy Dalton over the years. But I still think with a young QB coming in, he wants to work with that veteran. He wants to throw to someone who knows it's a sure thing. And if AJ Green is on the field, he's everything a sure thing is. Joe, what do you got to say?
I'm going to avoid him this year personally. I think I don't know. I can't trust somebody who hasn't played football in 2 years and is 32 years old.
1.5. And he's 31.
No, he's 32 now. And when you look at he just turned 32, by the way, so we're splitting hairs here. July 31st was his birthday. But when you look at Boyd, Higgins, Mixon, they're all kind of younger guys. And yes, I expect AJ Green to be that leader in the locker room. I expect him to make an impact on the football field. I'm just not sure that translates to the fantasy football realm for us. So I don't love him. I like Boyd more. I think Higgins is going to have a good rookie year, gelling with Burrow. And I think if Devontae Parker and AJ Green are going in the 8th round, that's an easy choice for me. I like other talent going around the same place.
That hurts to hear, but I do. We can talk about it later. But you brought up Tyler Boyd. I mean, he's going essentially a whole round later than AJ Green. Would you rather have? Let's be honest. If AJ Green is on the field, he's the wide receiver 1 for that team, at least on a depth chart. So, do you look at those two in the later rounds, going about 10 picks apart? Are you taking Tyler Boyd or AJ Green? I'm taking AJ Green.
Really? Boyd. I'm taking Boyd all day.
Boyd as well.
I love Tyler Boyd, man. I think I like him as a 6th rounder, to be honest.
I honestly thought that Gabe was going to say Tyler Boyd is going a full round earlier.
Yeah.
No, bro. And people are taking AJ Green earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, that's surprising to me. Tyler Boyd had a great year last year with, his quarterback was a lame duck, right? And now they have Joe Burrow coming in and a new coach, right? An offensive-minded coach. I expect that offense to be exciting, and they're going to be down a lot, right? I mean, that's the idea. They're not going to win 10 games this year. They might win 5 or 6. So that should be a fun offense to keep an eye on, though.
Definitely a lot of fun things to think about with that youth in Cincinnati. I mean, honestly, guys, I've heard what you have to say, and yes, Tyler Boyd was a 1,000-yard receiver last year without Andy Dalton most of the year. He was playing with a couple of scrubs as well. However, I want to take this to book it down territory with the stipulation that AJ Green is healthy. If AJ Green is healthy and he plays at least a minimum of 10 games, I think he has a better fantasy year.
So a way to do this is, and I shouted out the Fantasy Focus podcast earlier today on Twitter, and they liked a couple of them liked it. But what they do is they do on a points per game basis, which I think is fair. Like when we do these, I think that's fair instead of overall production. Because if you have, let's say you have Todd Gurley play 12 games this year, and then you have Mark Ingram play 16, it's not really fair to say like who was better all year, overall stats. So you say on a points per game basis. So we could do Tyler Boyd and AJ Green on a points per game basis.
So like an average?
Yeah. So basically like, yeah. But the thing is like if AJ Green only plays 3 games, then it's irrelevant. Let's say a minimum of what
10 games.
10 games
Yeah.
and on a points per game basis.
Perfect. I'm taking AJ Green. You guys taking Boyd?
I'll take Boyd.
Boyd.
Get down.
Yeah.
I should write the rest of that because you guys are all for Tyler Boyd. I'll update that later. All right. Well, it breaks my heart, but it also makes me smile knowing that I could potentially be better than you guys, I guess. Anyways, moving on. We got a couple more players to talk about. Surprisingly, even though they were so bad, there's so many things to look forward to, and that's Joe Mixon, newly acquired by me. Joe Mixon. He is going as the 4th pick in the 2nd round. So by golly, if you're in a redraft league and you pick up like a Josh Jacobs and then you snag a Joe Mixon on the turn, it's like your team looks solid right there. 1,100 yards last year in 2019, 8 total TDs. That is not a lot. So that's kind of what hurt his season. He had, oh my gosh, when I saw this, I got scared. He had 278 carries last year. That is insane to me. But when we do talk about Joe Mixon, you have to talk about how his season was literally cut in half because the first 8 games, you would have probably had him on the bench by week 3. He was virtually you couldn't play him. He was awful for fantasy. And then it wasn't until the second half of the year where he really turned it up. I think the coaches realized, well, either we're tanking and we're just giving everything to Mixon, or Mixon's really good. We should just start feeding him the ball more. And he took off. So, I mean, last year, it was tale of two halves, like I just said. I just don't know. I mean, last year, 8 through 16, he was a top 3 running back behind top 4 running back behind CMC and Dalvin Cook. I like him personally. I do think with the youth and development there and a new QB in a COVID-19 season that I'm kind of scared. But it seems to me that they're looking to utilize Joe Mixon in a way that they haven't utilized him before. So I am hopeful at the same time. What are you guys thinking? Does he have that top 5 potential? Joe, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Damon, go ahead. Did you say, Joe, I'll start with you, or Damon?
No, I said I think it does. No,
we're having technical difficulties here, people. Thank you for bearing with us. Joe, I'll start with you. Do you think Joe Mixon has top 5 potential?
I think it's possible. I'm not drafting him as a top 5 guy, but a top 10 guy. I think kind of what you elaborated on, or what you mentioned earlier, and I'll elaborate on, is he started the season and he was unplayable. I mean, literally unplayable. You had better luck just throwing one of your bench wide receivers in there and hoping he gets you 15 points. But as the season progressed, I think the Bengals realized that they're not a good team and that they needed to stop trying to air it out and actually have a football plan and have a game plan. And they stuck to it. And Joe Mixon actually had some success with that. This year, Joe Burrow's coming in, better quarterback upgrade. AJ Green's supposed to be back. T. Higgins is there. They're going to have a lot more options through the air. They're not going to be able to focus on Mixon as much. I think he's a top 10 running back. And if you can grab him in the 2nd round, that's not a bad spot to get him. Like you said, if you end up with a Zeke in the 1st round or a Henry and come back around and grab Mixon, you're in good shape.
That is fair. That's a awfully good looking team. Damon, you had something to mention. Damon?
Yeah, I think that he could be a top 5 guy. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Damon.
Go ahead.
I think we're experiencing some lag with Damon there. Jacob, anything?
I love Mixon. I liked him last year. I had him in a few leagues, but I remember in just regular redraft, right? Like people kept trying to trade him and nobody wanted him. So it was tough, but like that was not what could be expected of him on a regular basis, especially he's 24 years old. That's still pretty young. It's not like he hasn't been ran to the ground yet. You know, he hasn't been playing since how long has he been the starter? 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
Possibly,
Exactly.
yeah. So like so it's not like he came in at 20 starting. I like him a lot. I don't like, I'm not taking him in the first round, but I'll take him with that 11th pick, 12th pick. That's as high as I'll go, and that's pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I like him. I have him. I think I think he does have that top 5 potential. We talked about it last week with a certain player. I forgot who, but anytime you get that many carries, you're going to put up something. So I like the carry count there, and I don't think it's that high next season. But I mean, if it's 250 and up, I mean, oh man, like I'm excited for what he can do with it. He's extremely talented. We'll talk about Joe Burrow briefly because I think in redraft leagues, he doesn't have that much appeal as a rookie QB in a shortened COVID-19 season. But I mean, there are QBs out there like Kyler Murray last year and Josh Allen the year before that have had spot start success as rookies. Do you think Joe Burrow is going to have some spot start? Oh my, what's up with my S's today? Spot start success as a rookie.
He definitely can. I mean, as we've been talking about, look at all the weapons. And that's what it takes for a rookie quarterback to have some success is a good coach with an offensive mind and pieces around him. So you're right. He doesn't have standalone value in a redraft. You're not drafting him to be your QB1. But if you take if you're looking at a bye week fill-in and he's got a good matchup, I think he can give you some value there.
That's a fair way to look at it. And really quick before we move on, bottom line, does this team improve? I mean, they were literally bottom of the barrel last year. That's why they got the number 1 pick. With no offseason and a rookie QB, can this team improve from last year? Like, they have to, right? They just have to. They have so much talent there now. It just all rests on the shoulders of how well Joe Burrow can perform.
I'm excited for the Bengals, to be honest. I like just to watch them play. Like, I get Sunday Ticket every year, and I'm just excited just to tune into their games, even if I don't have anybody on my fantasy team, just because I'm excited. And the thing is with Burrow, the question is he going to be top 10 on a consistent basis? I don't know about that, but I might draft him with my last pick if I have like if I have like a Matthew Stafford and I just want another guy just in case. I'll mess with Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to say good comp, but I meant to say like a good solid choice right there for a QB because he's one of those QBs that you take and you're like, he's going to be okay. He's going to be good. But I really like that comparison. In the essence of time, we're moving on to another crummy team last year who also there's a lot of hype around this year because they really can only improve, and that's the Cleveland Browns. Finished at 6-10 last year. And we'll start off with the only good thing last year, and that was Nick Chubb. He's currently going a pick after Joe Mixon at 2.5. How scared are we of Kareem Hunt and that he will poach carries from Nick Chubb? Are they going to split the backfield? What do you have to say about it? Let's start with Damon.
I'm very scared of Kareem Hunt. I mean, he's the better runner. He's more dynamic. He needs less space than Chubb. I feel like if I'd rather wait because Hunt's going later than Chubb, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes, way later.
Way later.
Yeah. I'd rather just get Hunt and not waste like a third, fourth round on Chubb.
Chubb is probably a second rounder or first rounder, isn't he?
Really?
Yeah, he's going at the 205.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's a second rounder. I mean, some people might take him in the first round. And you know what? I am a little bit worried about Hunt, but I'm still taking Chubb over Mixon. If I'm sitting at the number 10 pick and they're both if they're both available, I'm taking them both. But
I was just about to ask that, Jacob. So now that I got your take,
at number 11, and I already took Hopkins, right? And I'm at number 11. I'm gonna go Chubb, to be honest, and I'm gonna hope I can get Kareem Hunt later. But I like Chubb a little bit more than Mixon.
What about you, Joe? Are you taking Joe Mixon or Kareem or Nick Chubb there?
No, I like Mixon in a redraft better. There's just not a real threat on that lineup. Giovanni Bernard is who he is. He's a niche guy. He's a third down back. He's going to come in, poach a couple of catches, but he's not a real threat to take carries from Mixon in the same way that Hunt is. And going over to, not even talking about who would I rather take, just the kind of question of, is Hunt going to be a factor? And we know he is. We saw it the last 8 weeks. And he's going to take the passing downs, but he's also going to get some carries. And now he's got an entire season behind him, or half a season, plus an off season, which I get is shortened, but he's going to have a lot more time to gel with the team. And I'm not exactly sure that it's going to be a 50-50 committee because Chubb is a damn good running back on the ground. Yeah. But I think Kareem Hunt is going to poach some of that goal line stuff from him. I think he's going to get involved a lot more when they're down. And I don't like Chubb as a top 10 guy at all at running back.
Wow.
Same. I'm with you, Joe.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't – you said it all, Joe. I'm not going to say any more. Let's go ahead and move on really quick to, I guess, NFL's second pretty boy behind only Jimmy G for you Niner fans out there. But that's Odell Beckham Jr. Goodness gracious. Supposedly he played with a hernia all year last year. I thought that was him just making excuses, but then I realized, man, you don't really need to make any excuses because I don't think it was your fault. It was Baker Mayfield, who was just awful and putrid last year. With that being said, if he is healthy from a supposed hernia and Baker Mayfield looks to improve, Are we high on Odell Beckham Jr. this year? He's currently going first 2 picks of the 4th round. And before I let it go to you guys, I don't want you guys to forget about Jarvis Landry, who is going in the 8th round, virtually the 9th round, and finishes the wide receiver 11 last year.
Wow, I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
I don't want to. I'll leave it to you guys, but to start us off, I think I would rather have Jarvis here later in drafts. What about you guys?
Feels like Jarvis has outplayed him the last 3 years, and especially the last 2 years, and doesn't get any love come draft time. And he makes somebody very happy who takes him in the 8th round, and Odell makes somebody very upset who takes him in the 3rd or 4th round. And I don't see any reason to think that that's going to change. I have them pretty equal. I like them both around the 5th, 6th round, and I think Baker Mayfield's going to do good, but Austin Hooper's going to get some of that love now too. Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb still have their jobs. I'm not sure I like either of these guys going in as my wide receiver 1 or maybe even wide receiver 2.
Yeah, Odell's frustrating, man. And I just traded for him in the league. But look, the thing is, we talk about ceiling again. He's as a top 10, top 5 ceiling, to be honest. But the thing I look at it is he only had 4 touchdowns last year. Unless Baker makes a huge improvement, I don't see it necessarily. And the thing is, like Joe said, Hooper's going to get some of those touchdowns in the end zone. And is Odell's touchdown, are they going to go up? I don't necessarily know. He needs big plays. Remember in New York, right? When Odell was like, oh, having a slow game, and all of a sudden, he has like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, and it's like, whoa, like that happened in 1 quarter. So that's what Odell needs, and he needs Baker to find him, and he needs the rest of the team to play well. So I'm just I like Odell. I always like him, and he's a big name, but I'm not. I don't know if I'm looking at the 4th round, who else is available in the 4th round at wide receiver? That's what I'm wondering, because it depends on that if I would draft him. Or it's 6th round, right?
No, he said 4th round.
4th round.
Oh, okay.
Gabe, do you have some choices for us here? That's probably good.
I don't have any choices for you guys. I am sorry. But I will say this. I agree with you guys, and I'm just looking at his 3-year trend. Of the last 3 years, 2 of those years he finished at or outside the top 25. And then one of those years, which was 2018, he finished as I believe the wide receiver 14. So he hasn't touched the top 10 since 2016. It feels like a really long time. I do feel, without even knowing who's there, I feel like there are better options at that value. And I can look it up really quick. Damon,
I have it.
You like Odell this year?
No, I trade him away actually in one league. I have 0 shares of Odell. I'd rather wait and get Landry in the 8th round. Odell is a better football player than he is a fantasy player to me, especially now. I feel like Jarvis is going to be in the slot and get more balls than Odell.
That's fair. I mean, I would rather have Jarvis Landry as well.
And then about Higgins too. Higgins got hurt.
Yeah, that's true. Jacob, I looked it up as well. And right off the bat, my favorite player, comeback player of the year, who we'll talk about later, comes to mind. Someone who is going around is Juju Smith-Schuster, about 2 picks apart. Who are you going to have, Juju or Odell this year?
I'm close.
Juju?
Juju. Yeah, Juju.
I would take Juju as well.
It's not that close for me, but I'll slightly go Juju. For where I'm looking, they have Juju going in the 4th round, and they have Odell going in the 5th round as his ADP. Yeah.
Okay.
That's fair. Anybody else there, Jacob, that might be going around?
So in mine, so I'm on fantasyfootballcalculator.com, and they have, so right here around Odell Beckham, they have Deebo Samuel, Marquise Brown, DJ Moore, DJ Chark, and Terry McLaurin. So I would rather have DJ Moore for sure. And they have Devontae Parker lower. I would rather have Parker and Moore over Odell for sure.
And Chark.
Yeah, I would rather have DJ Moore. DJ Moore, I have him. Yeah, we're looking at similar sites. He's just ranked higher. That's why I didn't see him. But DJ Moore, definitely. And then on the same team, Jarvis Landry, the value's there. And I don't want to deal with the headache of Odell because he's also just a prima donna. No offense, Odell. If you ever watch this, please don't beat me up.
And he takes plays off. Like if you watch his games, he'll literally not play football.
No, I know.
He's a huge headache. Joe, I'll give you one last point before we move on to the last position.
I'm looking at Fantasy Pros, guys, and they have Odell as the number 11 receiver. Okay, let me list off the next 5 or 6. Cooper Kupp, DJ Moore, Adam Thielen, A.J. Brown, Allen Robinson, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, Keenan Allen, Cortland Sutton. I'm almost taking every single one of those guys over Odell.
Almost. I was just about to say that. With the exception of Cortland Sutton, I'll have every single other wide receiver you just mentioned.
Yeah. I'd rather have Cortland Sutton.
I would rather have Cortland Sutton, but I think I would take Odell over Ridley.
No, not really. A.J. Brown for me.
I will end it with this. There's always the past, and in the past we have seen that Odell can be not good but great.
Yeah,
we're going to touch on one last position here for the Cleveland Browns, and that's the tight end position. They newly acquired Austin Hooper, currently going as a sharpshooter in the later rounds in fantasy football. My biggest question here is David Njoku. There was a lot of questions about him in the offseason, how he requested a trade, then he rescinded that trade offer. Then the coach for the Cleveland Browns came out and said he's definitely 100% in our game plan. We could quite possibly see the Cleveland Browns pulling a Baltimore Ravens and putting 2 tight ends out there on the same time. I mean, David Njoku's been injured quite a bit throughout his first 2 years. Are you guys taking Austin Hooper, David Njoku? Personally, I don't want either of them. But what are you guys thinking? Are you scared of David Njoku at the slightest? That tight end position doesn't look appealing to me in Cleveland.
Well,
I love Austin Hooper.
Glass cannon, so I'm pretty sure he's not going to make it.
Jacob, what about you?
I'm avoiding it. And the crazy thing is Austin Hooper was the best tight end in fantasy for a while last year. I don't think he finished number 1.
All right, Joe, looks like you're the lone truther for Austin Hooper. So
guys, let me explain. Baker Mayfield is not that good. I like him in fantasy this year because he has options, and I think he's going to chuck it to Hunt, chuck it to Hooper, and he's going to rack up points that way. But he is not that good of a quarterback. And what do we say about bad quarterbacks? They rely on their tight ends always. And Austin Hooper is the man. And David Njoku has been hyped up for 3 years and has yet to really give us more than a mediocre 2018 campaign. I know he was injured last year, but I don't think that he's going to be on the team. I think that his agent is going to get him out of there because he wants to go somewhere he can prove himself, and he's not going to do that behind Austin Hooper, and he's not going to do that with all these weapons. I love Austin Hooper if I can wait till the later rounds and grab him. And I hope you guys don't, so we can.
I mean, we know he has the talent, right? So
yeah,
That is true. That is
and
true.
how much is he getting paid, Gabe? I think earlier you said it's about $10 million a year. You don't pay a guy what was the number one tight end money before today's contracts to go out and not feed him the ball.
Dang, Joe, I don't like listening to you, but I freaking love it at the same time. I'm still not touching Austin Hooper, but I do like what you have to say.
No,
And
I'll
with
draft Austin Hooper, but not like super high.
Yeah.
Do
And
we
with
know
that,
his ADP?
he's like the 13th or 14th round. He's like going towards the end.
Oh my God, that's great value.
That's great value. Yeah.
That's great value.
Well, then, I will let you take that great value all the way to the draft line. Moving
Hey,
on.
guys,
Oh,
before
sorry.
we
Go
move
ahead.
on, Gronkowski or Hooper? Because I see Gronkowski's ranked above him.
Hooper.
I would probably just go Gronkowski because of name.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
basic
yeah.
like that.
You're an old head, Gabe. You like the AJ Green and Gronkowskis of the world. We don't blame you.
Dude, I love the
Calvin
why.
Johnson.
The whys. Also, to mention, I mean, we'll touch on Baker Mayfield, even though I said we're going to move on 3 times now. But you're right. He's not a good quarterback. He can only get better, though. But not
Mhm.
only do tight ends find success with crappy quarterbacks, also your slot wide receivers do, which is why I predict Jarvis Landry should be a very good producer, especially given his 9th round value. Moving on
Love that.
finally, for the 4th and final time.
Love that.
We are talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, 8-8 last year. This is a team that if you're excited about any of the 3 that we've talked about so far, you need to be excited about this one. That's just because, man, a team's never rested on the shoulders so much of a quarterback than this team did, because they showed that without him, they were horrendous, yet still succeeded in the NFL because of their defense. Now you add, arguably, which we'll talk about later, one of the better values at the quarterback position in the draft in Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, there's just so much potential here. And I'm going to start it out with the crowded wide receivers. And let's talk about Juju, because we just talked about him a minute ago. And I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I've talked about him so much personally. I think he's a candidate for comeback player of the year. But there are others there. DeMont likes Deontay Johnson. James Washington is a deep threat. They drafted Claypool. So there are other players there that could threaten that ceiling for Juju. But, man, everything points up. He gets his quarterback back. He moves into the slot. He has weapons on the outside that'll stretch the field. I mean, it's just all success. I will take him at the 4th round. And sometimes if I'm trigger happy, I'll take him in the 3rd round. But, guys, that is not accurate information. That's just Gabe's bias. Even though I give you unbiased fantasy advice, that is as biased as I will get. I'll take him in the 3rd round if I have to, so no one else will. Do you guys like any of the other wide receivers other than Juju? I mean, Deontay Johnson is getting a lot of talk.
Yeah, I'd take a flyer on Deontay for sure.
He's going later.
I don't know how much work him and Big Ben did together, but I'd take a gamble rather than spending a 3rd, 4th round on Juju. Like, he played a lot and got 500 yards last year. I know Mason Rudolph's not that good, but man, like, he left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth.
That's a good thing to say, but like, really though, like, it was Mason Rudolph, and that's like the one time you can say that. Like, it really was Mason Rudolph and this other guy. What was his name? Hodges. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
you can't even. I honestly think,
Yeah.
and this is going to be bold because we saw a year where DeAndre Hopkins was really, really good with really, really, really crappy QB play. But like, I don't even think you can put DeAndre Hopkins in that position and him have success.
Mhm.
That's how bad those QBs were. Joe, you were about to say something. Go ahead.
I think Juju should be under bit. So one thing about Juju, guys, he's been in the league 3 years. He's going into his 4th year. when the season starts, he's going to be 23 years old. So he's still very young. He's very young. I still think the best is yet to come for this guy. But I remember seeing something. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before that Ben Roethlisberger has a history, and not just with Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster prior to this, of producing 2,000-yard receivers. And it's just what he does, and he airs it out a lot. We know they throw it 50 times a game when he's under center. So I think that either James Washington or Deontay Johnson is going to break out, and either you're going to take the right one with that flyer, and he may help your season tremendously like Juju did 2 years ago, or it doesn't kill you because you're probably getting those guys in the later rounds. So I like taking a flyer on one, if not both of those guys with your later round picks.
Joe, I'm loving what you are saying. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger. He's 38 years old, and he wasn't so great the last time we saw him. But yes, he can support not only 2,000-yard receivers like he did for Antonio Brown and Hines Ward, I believe, but he can also support wide receiver twos, which is why I'm totally behind a breakout year from a player like Deontay Johnson. I don't know about James Washington too much, but I could also say Chase Claypool, because not a lot of people were talking about Juju Smith-Schuster in his rookie year, and he was honestly a great find for fantasy players throughout the year in his rookie season. And you can't say that a lot for fantasy wide receivers in their rookie years. So I think someone like Chase Claypool is also someone to look out for. Jacob?
Yeah, look, I was burned by Juju last year pretty bad, and but man, I don't even want to talk about what happened to me last year with Juju, but it's just so bad. 12 games and 550 yards and 4 touchdowns. Look, you talked about Hopkins. Hopkins had more than 1 year with bad quarterback play, and I think these type of guys like Hopkins and I think when Rodgers was out, Adams was still producing. So if you got it, you got it. And there's no quarterback play is definitely matters, but you can still do stuff without it. And I just look, the thing is with Juju is I say like I want to avoid him, but then I look at this and so like he's going right after Stephon Diggs and Tyler Lockett. So I would personally take Diggs and Lockett over him, but then he's going right around Allen Robertson, Robert Woods, Keenan Allen, DJ Chark, AJ Green. So I would take those guys. I would take Juju over those guys. So if that's what I'm looking at in the 4th round, I probably lean towards Juju because the potential is very high, and hopefully Ben's healthy. Ben hasn't missed a lot of time other than last year. So we all talked about the Steelers as bounce back players this year, and I guess I'll draft Juju in the 4th round if I have to.
Mm-hmm. You won't get there with Gabe because he's going to take him in the 3rd. But
hey, that's better for us. That's better for us.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I remember last year in our draft, I took Josh Jacobs right before Juju, and I tried to trade right on draft day. I regretted it, and I tried to trade. I was like, Josh Jacobs for Juju, and everyone thought I reached for Josh Jacobs. Actually ended up turning out to be a pretty damn good 2nd round pick, and Juju was a bust, so you never know.
Yeah, that is the one thing about fantasy football, and I've said this in the past. It is 50% knowledge of the game and 50% luck, because anything can happen in an NFL season. Let's go ahead and talk about our next player, our arguably another comeback player candidate, and that's James Conner. Boy, oh boy, I traded him away today. It was sad to see him go. I love the guy as an NFL player and just an overall guy. I mean, he's a cancer survivor. He's a trooper. He's a stud, and he's physically gifted, but he's also physically gifted at getting injured. So I had to let him go. But, I mean, good value, not good value. Jacob showed me something today. He's currently ranked as the 20th running back going into the 2020 season. I mean, I think that's a fair assessment right there where you keep him, because if he's healthy, he's going to get the workload. Mike Tomlin has always been a coach, whereas if his running back 1 is healthy, he is on the field. Only last year did we really see instances of that committee, and that's only because when Benny Snell was given the chance 1 game all alone, he couldn't produce. When Samuels was given the game all to himself, he couldn't produce. So they had to start mixing it up a little bit. I truly do think that when Conner is healthy, he is great for fantasy. He's just not always healthy, and he leaves games early all the time. Like,
yeah, he's like the Julio Jones of the running back.
He'll leave in the first quarter and come back in the fourth quarter, and then you'll be like, I only got 10 carries out of Connor today. Like, what happened? And then he'll also miss 4 or 5 games a season. So that's what scares me. But then again, if we're really looking at today's trade outside of the podcast, I also traded for Dalvin Cook, who is also injury prone. So you could say the same thing about him. But what do you guys make of James Conner?
Joe and I had a thorough discussion about this earlier today over text. And look, I'm going to say the same thing I told Joe. For me, it's like, look, yes, he's injury prone. And all those things, negatives you said are true, Gabe. But look so in 2018, he played 13 games. He had 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns. And if we're saying, and was Antonio Brown there that year? I don't think he was. Did he play?
Yeah, he was there.
He was? Yeah. Okay. So that obviously is a factor. But for me, it's like that is his potential. And it's a risk for some. And look, the thing is, nobody's taking him in the first 2 rounds anyway this year. So you're going to get him in the 3rd or 4th round or so. And I like that value because I think his ceiling's very high. And I think he could repeat if Big Ben stays healthy. And if we're expecting Juju to have the year he's having. And look, for me, is James Conner can run. He can catch. He's not the best catcher in the world, but he can catch. The thing is, the Steelers' defense is really good. We expect them to have a good offense. I think they're going to be up a lot. I think they're going to get a lot of turnovers, and they're going to hand the ball to James Conner and have him pound it. I feel really good about that. So whatever his value is, I don't know what his ADP is, but I know it's not the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, he's going like 3rd, 4th round, like mid-3rd.
That's the thing. Like I'm in one of the regular Yahoo Pro leagues, right? So I went no running back, if you guys know what that is. So I took Tyreek Hill and DeAndre Hopkins, and then I ended up getting like Leonard Fournette and James Conner as my running backs. And it's like if I have Hill and Hopkins, then cool, I'll take those guys as my running back. So I'm good with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he was far and away a great running back when he was healthy. The injuries do scare me, but you are right. And I was right earlier. Mike Tomlin doesn't do a committee. He's one of the few workhorse coaches in the NFL. So when his running back is on the field, you best believe he's getting the workload he deserves, which will make him fantasy relevant. I wish, just because I traded him away doesn't mean that I'm not going to be picking him up in other leagues or redraft leagues this year. I think his value is great for where he's going.
I would take him 3rd round, my first pick in the 3rd round. If he had a bad season, he had 116 attempts and 464 yards, which comes out to a 4-yard average, which is a great average. He just wasn't getting the proper attempts. And even though it was a bad season, he still got targets. He had 5, 7, 8, 4. And I think that will literally double with Ben Roethlisberger. So I feel like he's going to come right to form. And we have to believe that if we believe that Deontay Johnson and Juju can put up good seasons because it'll open up the running game.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And with that being said, again, because we're just so great at time management here.
Well, I want to hear Joe's thoughts on Conner too.
Sure, go ahead, Joe.
So I know I was a little bit harsh on him earlier, Jacob, but the reality is that there is some good news out of Pittsburgh, right? Like they could have went and drafted Dobbins or one of these other guys if they weren't that sure of him. But the fact is that they waited till the 4th round and then they got Anthony McFarland Jr., right? But that's not too crazy to grab a running back, even if you have a sure thing in the 4th round. A lot of teams do that anyways, just because you have to replace players constantly. So I don't think that's too crazy. I still think he's going to have a great year. Fantasy pros, and maybe this is wrong, they have him as the 45th overall pick, which if you're in a 10-man league, that's the 5th round. And if you're in a 12-man league, you're talking late 4th round. I love his value there.
That's value, yeah.
That's what we talked about earlier was if James Conner is my 3rd running back, I feel amazing. And if he's my 2nd running back, I may be looking to upgrade, but I'm not that worried about it. So I think he's a great player. I'm hoping that he improves, and I think Big Ben having him back, I'm not sure he'll ever match what he did in 2018. but he's definitely going to be a lot better than he was last year as long as he can stay healthy.
Joe, I like what you said there because you know why? I like what you said there, Joe, and you know why? Because he is our third running back in our first-round fantasy up-and-coming podcast this week. So yeah, we got great value for him there. Excellent. Last but not least, we can touch on Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, he's probably a streaming candidate this year, or very likely could be that QB you draft with your, last or second to last pick to be your starting QB to open up the season. I mean, he's done great things in the past. He's been great for years. Last year, he wasn't there. And the year before that, he wasn't great, but sometimes a break does a player good, especially when you're a little bit older. So he's had some rehab time, and he's looking to bounce back. He could arguably be another candidate for bounce back player of the year as far as fantasy quarterbacks go. I don't know if I want him right away. Actually, you know what? I probably would stack him with Juju. I do like that there. I don't know if Juju's going to necessarily get the touchdowns that I'm looking for in my wide receiver one, but he's going to get the targets and the value of a wide receiver too, and I'm all for that. So I do like Ben Roethlisberger this year. Anything to add, guys?
No, I think Jake can touch quarterback. Then you're just pretty much streaming all year.
Yeah,
matchup because it's matchup based.
I think he's the perfect guy that you're not taking him as your first quarterback if you don't have to. But if you wait on a quarterback, and let's say you go for a guy like Wentz or Rodgers or Stafford, I love getting Ben Roethlisberger late in the draft and being able to play matchups. So if Ben Roethlisberger is going against the Dolphins or something, I'm playing him. And if, Tom Brady has an awful matchup, I'm going with Ben Roethlisberger. So I love having two of those guys.
Nice. I mean, I agree with everything you said. Guys, I know I often have horse blinders on, but is there anyone I'm forgetting that we didn't talk about today?
We didn't touch Ebron.
Ebron's a good something worth discussing.
Yes, tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I forgot. McDonald's gone, dude.
Is he? What happened to Vince?
Not McDonald. The other guy's gone. Well, I forget his name.
What's his name?
Good, because he wasn't relevant. But Ebron is there. So that's actually really interesting to think about. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about Ebron in the past couple of weeks and that, he's never been that relevant. And it's just like, well, now he kind of is. I mean, he's good. He's athletic. He had that breakout season a couple of years ago in Indianapolis. I mean, are you guys willing to take him as your tight end one late in drafts?
Yeah, why not? Like last pick.
So if I wait on tight end and I take like a Gesicki or something, or like I talked about, I would love to have Ebron as my second guy, and I'm streaming them or matchup based.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
That is fair to say. I don't think he's on my radar, so to speak. I'd rather go for like a sleeper tight end, but knowing that he does have the high ceiling from that Indianapolis year, given that he's got a QB upgrade, well, he had Andrew Luck that year. Yeah, I just don't really know what to say about him. I guess I'm not like all eyes in on Eric Ebron, so my apologies, first-round fantasy fans. But with that being said, folks, I think that's it. And I thank you so much who's listening out there for putting up with today's audio issues because they have been frequent, but we are working on it every step of the way. Guys, any last words? It's draft season, so get ready for a lot of drafts. We have 3 coming up this weekend. We're excited to do them. I hope you guys have drafts coming up too. Say goodbye, guys, because we have sound issues today. Peace.